December 7th, 1941. 0342. USS Condor, a minesweeper stationed off the coast of Hawaii, spots a periscope 50 yards off its bow. 0645. USS Ward, destroyer, opens fire at the general location of reported submarine, sinking it with second shot. 0653. USS Ward reports, "We've attacked, fired upon, and dropped depth charges upon a submarine operating in defensive seas." 0702. Opana Mobile Radar Station, one of 6 radar stations on Oahu, identifies 50-plus aircraft headed for Oahu and promptly communicates with Fort Shafter.
When they received the readings from the radar station, they believed that the radar had detected a fleet of US B-17s. The men at Fort Shafter told the officer stationed at the Opana radar station that it was nothing. Of course, for security reasons, they could not give a reason for the reply. Should the men have been able to do this, then the men at the Opana radar station could have been able to investigate the claim and make further precautions.
0720. The aircraft are now only 70 miles away. 0733. When Japanese negotiations are cut off with America, President Roosevelt sends a message to Lieutenant General Walter Short, informing him of the situation. Communication problems forced the telegraph to be sent via commercial telegraph and delayed significantly. 0740. The first wave takes off from Japanese carriers. 49 high-altitude bombers, 51 dive bombers, 40 torpedo planes, and 43 fighter planes. 0755. An uncoded message sent from the command center on Ford Island to all U.S. ships. Air raid on Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill. The first wave of Japanese planes strike. USS Oklahoma, capsized. USS Utah, capsized. USS Nevada, struck by a torpedo and 2 bombers, manages to shoot down Japanese torpedo plane. USS Arizona. Torpedoes tear into the USS Arizona, but she does not sink. USS West Virginia. 6 torpedoes hit the USS West Virginia, grounding her, but leaving her deck above the surface and in flames. USS California. 2 torpedoes strike. 2 bombers hit their mark, sinking slowly. 0810. An armor-piercing bomb ignites more than 1 million pounds of gunpowder, creating a fireball in the USS Arizona, killing 1,177 men. A sailor on the USS Nevada claims to have seen the ship jump out of the water and split in 2. It sank in only 9 minutes. 0850. USS Nevada heads for open sea. After being attacked by the second wave of Japanese planes, the crew ground her rather than risk blocking the channel. 0854. The second wave of planes, 35 fighters, 78 dive bombers, and 54 high-altitude bombers. Bombers attack the Navy dry yard and hit the battleship USS Pennsylvania. A bomb hits the onboard ammunition of the USS Cassin, and the ship rolls into the USS Downs. The USS Raleigh is bombed, and gear is jettisoned in an effort to maintain upright. 0930. USS Shaw bow is blown to bits. Shrapnel rains down half a mile away. 1000. Japanese fighters rendezvous with bombers off of Oahu and return to the carriers. The attack on Pearl Harbor is finished.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii was a bold and unexpected move from the Japanese Navy. If the majority of the U.S. fleet could be eliminated, Japan would have free reign over the Pacific for months while the U.S. attempted to repair or rebuild the Pacific Fleet, or move another existing fleet into the area. The Senate unanimously declared war on Japan, while the House voted 388-1 in favor of war against the Japanese. After the Pearl Harbor attack, war hysteria engulfed the U.S., citizens feared a second attack. As a result, President Roosevelt was pressured by state representatives into taking actions against those of Japanese descent living in the U.S. 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, on February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. Around 120,000 people of Japanese descent who were living in the U.S. were taken from their homes and placed in internment camps. The U.S. claimed that their actions were justifiable for the reason that there was a possibility that the people of Japanese descent were spying for Japan, even though none of the people interned had ever shown disloyalty to the nation. More than 2/3 of the interned were American citizens, and about half of them were children. In many cases, family members were separated and placed in different camps. Only a total of 10 people were convicted for spying for Japan during the entire war, and all of those convicted were Caucasian. The internment camps were placed all over the interior West. The majority were in isolated desert areas of Arizona, Utah, Idaho, California, Colorado, and Wyoming.
For the interns, life was not easy. In many cases, they were only given 48 hours to evacuate their homes and were only allowed to bring with them a few personal possessions. Consequently, they were easy prey for fortune hunters who offered them less than the market price for their possessions. They were housed in barracks and forced to use communal areas for laundry, washing, and eating. The camps were watched over by military personnel and surrounded by barbed wire. In addition, many people died from lack of medical care and high levels of emotional stress.
In December 1944, Public Proclamation No. 21 allowed internees to leave their internment camp and return to their homes. The last of the camps were closed in March 1946. Leaving citizens were given $25 and a train ticket home. As World War II came to its end, some internees chose to remain in the U.S. and rebuild their lives. Others, however, were unforgiving and chose to leave the U.S. and return to Japan. In order to retaliate against Japan, during the final stages of World War II in 1945, the Allies of World War II conducted an atomic bombing that was to be used against the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. These two events are the only use of nuclear weapons in war to date. Together with the United Kingdom and the Republic of China, the United States called for a surrender of Japan in the Potsdam Declaration of July 26, 1945. Threatening Japan with prompt and utter destruction. Japan ignored this ultimatum, and the little boy was dropped on the city of Hiroshima at 08:15 on the 6th of August, 1945, devastating Japan. When you arrive in Hiroshima, you can look around, and for 25 and perhaps 30 square miles, you can see hardly a building. It gives you an empty feeling in the stomach to see such man-made devastation. Wilfred Burchett. Immediately after the bombing, thousands of people were wiped out by being instantaneously vaporized. The Hiroshima Prefecture Health Department estimated that, of the people who died on the day of the explosion, 60% died from flash or flame burns, and 40% died from falling debris. Hiroshima does not look like a bombed city. It looks as if a monster steamroller had passed over it and squashed it out of existence. Wilfred Burchett. Describe the devastation of the bomb.
The cities were in complete ruins after the bombing. Over 75% of the entire city had been destroyed, and there had been over 100,000 deaths combined from both bombings. The blast from the atomic bomb had been so great that people's shadows were burned to the sidewalk where they were walking, and their bodies had been completely disintegrated. When the Americans dropped the bomb, they were intending to use it as a science experiment to see how much damage one small bomb could cause. They had no idea what would actually happen and what the actual consequences of pushing the small button would be.
Senior military figures of the United States military, General Groves and Admiral Purnell, were convinced the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on Japan would have such a great impact on the country they would surrender and withdraw from the war. Hiroshima was the target of the first bomb on Japan. But where would the second be dropped? Kokura. Kokura was the primary target of the United States. Nagasaki was only added to the list as a backup target. At the time, Nagasaki was a large shipbuilding city home to a large military port. It was never a favored target by the military because it had been bombed previously. On August 6, 1945, the crew of the boxcar, the B-29, set to drop the second bomb, took off in the direction at 0340. Once they arrived, they found that Kokura was covered with clouds, which did not follow the pilot to see where the bomb was being dropped. As the fuel from the boxcar was running low, the crew decided to drop the bomb on Nagasaki instead of Kokura. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man was dropped on the port city of Nagasaki. Fat Man was a very effective bomb. Its blast bigger than that of Little Boy's, but its impact was lessened by the natural topography of the city. An area of 2.3 by 1.9 miles was completely destroyed. Parts of the city were luckily saved from the blast, as much of the city was broken up by water and the fire could not cross these gaps of land and burned out. Injuries similar to those of Hiroshima were also witnessed at the Nagasaki bombing. Similar to the Hiroshima bombing, many in Nagasaki died after the immediate impact of the bomb. The worst was when electric and telephone wires got twisted around people's legs and they couldn't escape. And they died in that position, fallen to their knees. Yosuke Yamahata. A report by the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey put the number of deaths at 35,000, wounded at 60,000, and 5,000 missing. Over 70% of the city's industrial zone was completely destroyed.
The radiation from both the Nagasaki bomb and the Hiroshima bomb killed many, many people. The deaths caused by the radiation poisoning are believed to have outnumbered the immediate deaths caused by both bombs. Many expecting mothers were exposed to high levels of radiation caused by both bombs, and their children were born with defects. To this day, we see the effects of radiation from both Little Boy and Fat Man that are still present in the population. Children are still born with genetic mutations from the bomb, and the repercussions of dropping these bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki will never be forgotten.
To be here, in the exact place.
Over a foaming, seething, writhing mass of faces, lifted joyfully and buoyantly and gloriously happy at the